Boyhood is perhaps one of the most interesting movies out there. Not necessarily because of anything that actually happens in the movie, but for the intricate and layered story of what actually happened behind the scenes of its production. Because, as is widely well known, Boyhood was actually filmed over the course of 12 years with all the same actors, documenting accurate changes to both the world around them and the people within the story. Absolutely no time skip was artificial, and all of the aging you see is completely real, showing just how patient and dedicated Richard Linklater was to bringing his unorthodox vision to life. And while the movie has been duly praised for the dedication of everyone involved, the methods used to make the movie often overshadow other aspects of it. Mainly, is it actually that good? And today, I'd like to address that particular topic in detail. Just how much of the praise Boyhood gets is actually directed at the movie itself versus its long and complicated production. And how good are the final results when judged based solely on their own merits? And there will be spoilers for this movie ahead. So in case you haven't seen it yet and don't want to know what happens, I would recommend coming back to this video another day. Okay, so to make one thing completely crystal clear right off the bat, Boyhood does deserve every ounce of praise and recognition it's gotten for its extremely odd approach to making the movie. Because most other movies would have simply used two or more actors to play the kids and have the adults put on age-progressing makeup. But here it's all the same people, and all the aging you see is real. And once again, everybody involved does deserve proper credit for that. Especially because there were a million different ways that idea could have gone completely wrong, considering they filmed it over the course of 12 years. Again, there were so many ways the movie could have ended up cancelled with that much uncertainty surrounding the filming. So the fact that the final product even exists at all is a small miracle in and of itself. But that being said, does the actual movie end up living up to its legendary production? And that's where things get a little more complicated. Because when you really look at it, the movie doesn't offer much that other coming-of-age stories already have in arguably better ways. Honestly, if it had just been made the normal way, it probably would have been quickly forgotten once award season was over, as the performances are still admittedly pretty fantastic. Because when you really look at it, the movie is quite boring in its depiction of slice of life, and towards the end it seems desperate to try and be profound, but never feels as if it's really able to achieve it. I mean, it does bring up a few interesting topics, but it's never really enough to get one thinking like more famous coming-of-age and midlife crisis type movies do. In other words, it's one of those movies that comes across like it thinks it's saying something important, but the audience is apt to feel otherwise. I'm not saying it's necessarily pretentious, just that it's not as profound as it seems to think it is. And honestly, a major reason for this is specifically because of the way it was filmed. I mean, for most of filming, they didn't even have a finalized script. They had no way of knowing where the story was going to go because of an insane amount of real-world factors that could have forced it in any number of directions. So as a result, beyond the vague theme of its title, how's it really supposed to know what it's trying to say? I mean, I'm sure Richard Linklater had an idea of where he wanted the story to go and what he wanted to say with it. But again, with so many undetermined factors, he couldn't come up with anything too concrete in case he was forced to drastically change the story's direction. And because of that, the movie only starts trying to get more philosophical towards the end. And that was probably because by that point in filming, Linklater knew the story was probably going to turn out more or less how he wanted it, and was thus more comfortable with saying what he wanted to say with it. But again, in the end, it just doesn't have the impact that he was probably hoping it would. To put it simply, Linklater should definitely be commended for bringing his vision to life, even with all the obstacles in his path. But at the same time, that very idea was probably to the detriment of the story. Because had he been able to write out the whole script from the start and film it like a conventional movie, the more philosophical parts would have probably flowed better and would have fit into the overall story better. But again, with a million uncertainties in the way he chose to film it, he was stuck writing most of the script as he went along. And that obviously doesn't lend itself too well to a movie where the writer is trying to say something to make the audience think. As a man who's written books, I can safely say that it's pretty much a no-brainer that a movie like that is going to work much better with not only a whole script, but a very tightly written one to boot, which is a luxury that a movie like Boyhood simply could not have. In other words, the concept behind filming the movie and what Richard Linklater wanted to say with it were kind of at odds with each other from the word go, which is why the later parts of the movie don't quite land when it tries to get existential. But conversely, where the movie does do better is in the first half, where it just focuses more on random aspects of Mason's life and life in general. Because not only does it work as a pretty accurate depiction of what a normal person's life actually looks like, but it also has a more simple theme as befitting a movie that can't have a finished script. Normal people just trying to live their lives and the struggles that come with it. And if the movie had stuck more to that for the duration of its runtime, just focusing on slice of life, and particularly Mason's, it probably would have turned out better. Because again, it's delving into philosophical discussions near the end just doesn't work, both because of what it's saying and how it goes about saying it. To put it another way, if Linklater had made the entire movie focus on the slice of life aspects of existence and called the movie Life, it probably would have suited his vision for the production a lot better. Because again, a film that just focuses on people living their lives and doesn't really have much to say beyond that would have suited a movie that couldn't have a completed script a lot better. Especially because it also would have been easier to adjust itself if something unprecedented did happen during production, as random things disrupt people's lives all the time. Because, as I've already said a couple of times, the movie's attempts at existentialism just don't pack the emotional punch that the writers clearly thought it would. Now, at this point, I know you're probably thinking, but the movie was critically acclaimed across the board. How can you be saying that the ending doesn't work? Well, here's the thing. It is true that Boyhood is probably one of the most acclaimed movies of the new millennium, both from critics and audiences, as a matter of fact. But if you actually look at those reviews, how many of them are actually praising the story versus what the production team went through to bring the movie to life. As I said at the start, it was the fact that Richard Linklater actually managed to take 12 years worth of footage with the same actors while incorporating real events over that same time period and actually make it into a coherent film that's given it so much praise. Because once again, if you just look at the story itself, especially towards the end, it really doesn't have anything to offer that 100 other movies of a similar nature haven't offered already, and in a few cases arguably better than it was here. Now, I'm not trying to say that the movie is a bad one, or that it didn't ultimately succeed in what Richard Linklater was trying to do. I'm just saying that its attempts to be philosophical and delve into existentialism don't work. And as I just noted, how many reviewers have actually praised the movie on those specific qualities? Beyond its unconventional production, Boyhood's strength as a movie lie a lot more in the earlier slice-of-life themed portions of the movie. And as I said before, probably would have been better off if it had committed to that the whole way through. But because of the story behind its production, and the fact that it did actually lead to a watchable, and arguably even good, final film, most people tend to focus all of their praise on that, rather than judging the story for what it ultimately is. Because had it had a completely normal production, it probably wouldn't have been nearly as acclaimed as it was. Now, once again, I do believe that Linklater's efforts, as well as everyone else's involved in the production, do deserve proper praise. Because even if the final results weren't the best, what they did achieve was still really impressive. It's just that most seem to focus solely on those aspects of it, and for that reason alone hail it as a masterpiece, while failing to examine the story as one normally would to expose its flaws. Basically, Boyhood is a classic example of the story behind a movie's production arguably being a lot more interesting than the final product. Only in this case it actually worked to the movie's benefit and made it a lot more acclaimed and beloved than it probably would have been otherwise. Alright, I think that was everything I had to say on that. So now I'd like to hear what you guys think. Do you think the main reason Boyhood got and continues to get so much love is because of the unconventional way it was filmed, and that most are willing to overlook its story issues because of that? Or do you believe that there's absolutely nothing wrong with it and that it deserved every ounce of praise that it's been given? Please feel free to let me know in the comments below. And remember, you don't have to agree with this video just because you watched it. You can feel absolutely any way that you want to about both Boyhood and its production, and if you think I was completely wrong, that's perfectly okay. And thank you all for watching. I greatly appreciate it, and I hope to see you all next time.